to another Simple Index video. In this video, we're going to be discussing concepts concerning barcodes and optical character recognition, or OCR. We're not really going to get into the details of how to set up a job that has barcode fields or OCR fields. We will look a little bit at the job configuration to see what techniques we're employing there. There are other videos that go much more in depth about how to actually set up jobs using those types of fields. But let's talk about barcodes first. So barcodes are very powerful in that they are typically have a very, very high rate of accuracy. So you're going to get a value unless there's just something wrong with the barcode. So it's either good or not good. It's not that it can be misread, like say a piece of text could be where an E gets interpreted as a 3 or something like that. A barcode is going to get read correctly, or it's not going to get read at all. So you certainly have some clarity there on what's going on with your document processing as to whether the barcodes are working and that sort of thing. So if we just want to take a look at a couple examples here, we've got a situation here on the left where we're looking at a document that comes in and already has some barcodes on it. And so we're just going to use those barcodes as our index values to store these documents away out into our electronic records processing system or whatever backend system we're putting these into, or just if we're storing them long-term in a digital archive. Over here, we've got a different scenario where we have a cover sheet. So we're having a series of barcodes as a first page of a document. This is great when you're doing, like, say, a back file, for example. You're doing an archive. You can take all those files out of the file folder, out of the filing cabinet, rather, and in front of each file folder, create a barcode sheet like this. You can use our simple cover sheet product to do that. And then these values get read on the first page, and then every page that follows that until we get to a new cover sheet gets these values associated with it. So they become part of the file name, they become part of the folder structure, they become the information that gets read into your records system if there's a back-end system that we're putting these documents into. So looking at those, let's go into some jobs and see how they're used exactly. So first off, we're going to look at that first example that has the invoices with the barcodes on it. That's in the OCR and Barcode samples folder that installs with Simple Index. So it's this job B1, read invoices with barcodes. I'm going to load that job, and then I'm going to run it. And so it's pulling all the files in for me, and as you can see here, very quickly, it just reads in those documents for us, captures the values on the page. So we've got a barcode for category. It's 123 ABC. We've got a barcode for document ID, which is the one down at the bottom, ABC 123. Now in this case, we're just telling Simple Index to look at the entire page and find any barcodes that are there and put them into the index fields. Well, how do we make sure the right ones get in the right spot? Let's go into the job configuration wizard and take a look at that. If we look at our indexing and file naming, we've got 2 barcode fields, and in this case, we're just giving a very basic template using Simple Index's built-in templating language, and we're saying look for a value that is 3 numbers and 3 letters, and then the doc ID, 3 letters, 3 numbers. And then it's also adding a page value to it, which is this counter right here. So if it was a multi-page document, it'd be page 1, 0001, page 2, 0002, etc. So that's what's going on as far as putting the correct barcode in the correct index field. Now, you can also use zones in association with barcodes. We can draw boxes on the page and show it where to look on the page. So that's another way to accomplish this. But in a lot of times, it's just faster to set a template if we don't have to get that granular. And also if the barcodes move around on the page, if whoever's applying barcode labels, for example, isn't putting them on the same spot every time, then your zone wouldn't always be accurate. So we can just give it this template, and we know that things are good. Let's take a look at some other barcode options while we're in the recognition wizard. So you can see a few things that we can adjust here. We have multiple engines within the software. So it has different, just different manufacturers have written dictionaries, essentially, if you want to think of it that way, that we've incorporated into Simple Index. And we also have a voting capability, which means if you have a bad quality barcode, something that the document's just been handled too much and the barcode is of low value or just wasn't printed very clearly or what have you, the voting option will actually take a sampling from each of these engines multiple times, and then whichever value that those engines say is the value of the barcode, whichever one has the most repetitions rises to the top and becomes the value that gets put into the index field. Below that, we have our barcode types. So whatever format this is in this particular document that we're looking at, these barcodes are in what's called a code 39 barcode type, or if you want to think of it like sort of as a font, a barcode font. And by specifying which barcode type we're using, it gives us 2 advantages. One, Simple Index doesn't have to go through all the barcode types and compare what it gets back when it reads a barcode off the page. It just knows I'm only looking at code 39 barcodes, and so it's much, much faster that way. The second thing that lets us do is if we were to have a document that had multiple types of barcodes, say that in addition to our doc ID barcode here, we also had a QR code somewhere on the page that had some shipper information, for example. And we don't want to read that. So we can just tell it, only look at the code 39s, ignore the QR codes, and it'll just bring back values that match that particular barcode type. Let's cancel out of this wizard, and we'll go back here, and we'll just let this job kind of finish out, so we'll see what happens with it. If we take a look at the grid here, we can see that every page got 2 values, exactly what we want. If there were an error somewhere, we could go in and just click on that page and manually edit the values if we needed to. And then you can see 2 are in red here, and these are just blank pages that have been deleted by SimpleIndex, so we don't have to deal with those. So if we save all and give everything the current values that it's already got stored, yep, and then we're going to release the batch. And if we go look at the output folder here, we can see that the category field became the folder, and then within that, the doc ID field became the name of the file followed by that counter. So there we go. Let's take a look at that second situation with the cover sheets. So we've got another job within the samples. It's in the healthcare folder in this case. We've got a number 5, process patient records. Let's pull that one up. You can see we're looking for some 4 values here, chart numbers, names, age, and gender. We saw that on our sample just a moment ago. Let's run the job and see what happens here. So basically there's that cover sheet, and then there's 4 or 5 pages following it, and there's another cover sheet, 4 or 5 pages following that, another cover sheet. And so as it reads these cover sheets, it's capturing those values, and we can see here that it's deleting the cover sheet because we don't want those in our final file. They're just used for the temporary cataloging of these files, and then the cover sheets don't end up in the final scan. I'm going to turn off that deletion for just a moment so we can see it. So we have our chart number, our name, our age, and the gender of the patient. There we go. And if we look at the grid on this one, we can see that those barcode sheets have been read. They're marked in red to be deleted, but the values haven't passed along. And what happens there is when we save the index, let me turn on that deletion again. There we go. Save the index. So now you can see that the values that we captured before have moved forward to the next set of index values, but they're in blue here. And blue indicates that we've just forwarded them from the last good read that we had. So if I save index now, you can see that those values get populated into that page. And so on. So if I do save all, and we'll tell it yes, use all the values. Let's not release the batch just yet and go back to that grid. And we'll see that all the values have been moved forward. Exactly what we're looking for. So now if we do our save index again, and this time release the batch, again it's going to move things to the output folder. If we look at the output folder, we'll see that in this case the chart number becomes our folder level. Within that we have a TIFF file that has all of the values, all 4 of the values used to name that file. So that's kind of what we're looking at with barcodes, again in kind of a high level view. Let's talk for a second about OCR. Now with OCR, we're reading that text that's on the page. And so if we have a file, for example, we're just reading text on the page. There's a couple of ways we can go about that. So let's run a job that uses that, and we'll discuss it a little further. In this case, we want to look at the read invoices with Zone OCR. So it's going to be those invoices that we saw in the first sample I gave with the barcodes, same ones, but this time we're just going to read values off the page using the OCR rather than the barcodes. So we'll open that job, again, run it here. And it's going to pull in all those documents for us. You can see we're looking for the account number, the order number, and the company rather this time, rather than a doc ID and a category like we were before. So in this case, those values are coming from this text that's right here on the page. Let me zoom in a little bit so we can see that better. So we're looking at the account number, the order number, and the company right there. So account number and order number is down here. And if in this case, we've used zones to define this. So if I turn on my set field coordinates radio button over here, we'll see the zones that were drawn for this document. So for field 1, it's this kind of smaller box, field 1 being the account number. And you can see it's read a bunch of text there. So how do we tell that we're only bringing back the account number from all those lines of text that it is read? Well, again, we're using some templates like we saw before. So we can go in and look at the job configurations wizard again. And if we go to our indexing and file naming, we'll see that we have 3 OCR fields. In this case, we've just done a very basic template saying that the account number is a 7-digit number, 7 pound signs. Order number is a 6-digit number, 6 pound signs. And then company, we're doing something a little different here. We're actually looking at a list, or what we call a dictionary value. So if I go in and edit this one and kind of drill down a little bit into it, to our dictionary matching tab, right here we've given it a database location. So we're telling it to look in a database that's called a database table called companies, and within that there is a column also called companies, and it's just a list of values. And so it looks at the words that are in that outer box that we've drawn, and it compares those words against the words in that column. And when it finds a match, it returns that as the index value. We don't have to be as sophisticated as using databases. You can have a simple text list, for example. You can also just load those values into the job. Once you have that text list, you can bring in all the values, and they'll stay stored with the simple index job, and you don't have to have the backend file to call up the list. It's just part of your job and gets saved out. Let's cancel out of this, and we'll go back and look at some OCR options, just like we did with barcodes. So here's the options for different settings within OCR. So we can enable a full page OCR where we're finding every word on the page. In this case, we did not do that. We just set the zones, as we said. And then if we look at this, just like the barcodes, we have engines. And right now we're set to the professional engine, which is the Abby Fine Reader engine. If you're familiar with Fine Reader as a standalone OCR product, well, here this is the software development version that they offer, and we build it into our software. And here in version 11, we've got some nice capabilities with it. In addition to doing what we've just standard OCR like we've just talked about here, you can also do some handprint recognition, but in very specialized situations. So if we have think of like a census form where you write your name in one letter per box, or maybe it's a slightly different form where it's just got a last name box and a first name box and an address box and a city, state, and zip box, that sort of thing. And the information is handwritten, so it's printed. It's not in cursive, in other words. The professional engine, the Fine Reader engine, can actually interpret those boxes and interpret that handwriting and put it into the index fields for us. You'll also see that we have this AWS down here, those 3 different AWS categories. That's Amazon Web Services. This is their Textract cloud system, so it actually sends the value in the zone or the full page up to Amazon's cloud, makes the conversion, sends that data back down, all very quickly. And so with the text one, for example, we can do what we've done here in terms of full page OCR, but we can also, AWS is very good at handwriting. So if you have something, even in cursive, so we can do either handprint or handwriting, and it can just convert a document into machine readable text. The forms version is when we're trying to identify specific, like this with this document here, when we're trying to find the account number. So I would send it, it brings back what it calls matching pairs. So we would send it account number and then tell it we're trying to find a value after that. And so it'll return back to the software a field that has account number at the beginning, followed by whatever value is the pair that goes with it, that completes that pair, the value right next to it. Same thing with the name, same thing with the date, for example. And then invoices is what it sounds like. It can do invoice processing, and it basically can kind of out of the box identify the common fields that you would find on an invoice, like the vendor name and an invoice number and a total and things like that. And so we can use it to kind of work with invoice formatted information to get the values back into simple index the same way. So let's go back to our job here, as we've done before. And we'll just look at that grid again, and we'll see that, again, everything's been filled in, the blank pages have been deleted. And if we just save all on this one and release it, and we'll bring up the output folder, and you can see here that we used the account number as the folder level, and then within that, again, we have the order number and the company as the 2 index values that we use to label the file. Now, one more option we have within OCR, you might get documents, and more likely, increasingly more likely these days, rather than something you're scanning, you're getting a PDF, something that was born digital. And as you can see here, I'm able to highlight the values right in this document, so that means that's full text there on the page, rather than a scan where we just have an image of a page and that has to be interpreted by OCR. So Simple Index can find values in that text layer without having to do an OCR conversion. So let's close out of this one, go back, and we're going to do a job from the OCR and Barcodes folder again, read invoices from PDF. Let's load that one up. And if we run it, you can see we're looking for some different values here: doc number, date, what type of document it is, customer name, and a total. So here we've got all that information. So the document number is coming from right here in this corner. The date is right next to it, and then we also have the type, which is going to be an estimate or an invoice in the case of this job, our customer, and then our totals down at the bottom of the page. And again, we're reading all the text that's on the page, not just the, so if we look here, this is everything that it read off of that page. So how do we pull out just the values that we want? Well, if we look at our job options once more, go into our indexing and file naming, we can see that we've done some templating, and we've done a little bit of differently. So for the doc number, we're actually using a regular expression. These 3 carets here are telling SimpleIndex to use the regular expression language rather than the built-in templating language. So it's just saying to look for essentially a 1 or 2 digit number on the page is what it amounts to here, or actually up to a 4-digit number. And so it just identifies that. For the date, we're back in the SimpleIndex templating language, and we're just saying look for a 2-digit number, a slash, a 2-digit number, a slash, and a 4-digit number, or, so we've got the pipe character here, which is an or. It can be a single digit, slash a single digit, slash 4 digits, and then we have a few others that go on down there. And so it looks for a match on that first set of numbers, and if it doesn't get that, it looks for a match on the second set of numbers, and so on until it does find a match. So we can kind of allow for the different ways that dates appear on documents. With the doc type, since we just have the 2 choices, we've put those, rather than doing a list in a database or something, we've put those directly into the template field here. It can either be estimate or invoice. Again, that pipe character standing in is our or value, estimate or invoice. If you see one of those 2 words, give that back as the value that goes in doc type. And then the customer is actually a database match like we saw before, matching a list of names and returning the match back to the index field. And then again, here we're doing a regular expression for the total value. So let's cancel out here. Take a look at our grid like we've been doing, and we'll see that everything has a value. We could simply click on any one of these if a value was missing and go in and directly edit the fields. But since everything was captured, we can just save everything and release that job again. And if we go look at the output on this one, you can see it used the doc type as the folder level. We split it into estimates and invoices. If we go in here and look at an estimate, we've used the customer as a subfolder. And then finally we have the PDFs, which are named by the remaining fields and the customer name again. So that's really kind of our high-level look at barcodes and OCR. There's a lot of capability here for automating your document capture when you're using barcodes or OCR. There's other features that SimpleIndex has that actually involve the OCR engines as well. Something that's new in version 11 is really powerful, is the ability to identify duplicate documents. You can give it a set of pages, and it can read all the text on each page, and anywhere that it finds the same text essentially on 1 or more pages, it can identify that as a duplicate page. Definitely beyond the scope of what we're looking at here in this basic concepts view, but just be aware that SimpleIndex does have these more powerful capabilities. So, hope this has proved useful, and thank you for watching. We'll talk to you in another video.